Not one, not two, not even three, but 4 new ride models have just been released by Intamin Amusement Rides, and some of them look pretty familiar. So that's why I'm calling this video the Intamin Heist. Find out why next on Coaster News. Welcome into Coaster John, and before I get into the Intamin Heist, I do just want to resolve our last video by saying that the RMC crews are currently back and working on Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens, Tampa. So hopefully that opens sometime soon. I know I went all over that in my last video. If you want to watch that last Coaster News, I'll link that in the tab above, but hopefully they open it sometime this year. That's to be dated. Anyways, let's get into the Intamin Heist. So calling it a heist might be a little bit dramatic, but that's kind of how I feel about this because all of these ride models, except for one, do look eerily familiar to a lot of other ride models that we're used to. So the first one that I saw was the ride model that Intamin's calling their Hot Racer model. And basically, right off the bat, you notice that it's exactly like RMC Raptor models in that it's the single rail coaster where, you know, it's single seating, one person after the other. And it's also one rail as well. Most, coaster track has 2 rails. So over the last couple of years, RMC has been known to make these single rail coasters. There's only 2 of them right now in Railblazer at California's Great America and Wonder Woman Golden Lasso coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. But there will be one coming to Six Flags Great Adventure in Jersey Devil, which I'm super excited for. Obviously that construction was halted due to COVID. So now it's going to be a new for 2021 coaster. But RMC is very well known for these single rail coasters. And now it seems like Intamin is, throwing their hand in the pot as far as single rail coasters go. And Intamin, from the looks of it, is pretty much just taking this single rail concept. So I don't want to accuse Intamin of stealing these ride models, but they are very, very similar. One channel that I'll give a shout out to is Coaster Daddy, because he was asking the question of, is Intamin innovating or are they replicating? Because that's definitely what they seem to be doing, is replicating these ride models. But basically, the first one that I saw is this Hot Racer model, which is a single rail coaster, eerily similar to RMC's Raptor model. And granted, it's dueling, so that's different than any other RMC Raptor that we've seen yet. Apart from that, to me, when I look at this video, the Hot Racer concept, it also looks so much like West Coast Racers. Just the fact that it's dueling, and it just seems like a very similar layout to West Coast Racers, which is of course a premier dueling coaster at Six Flags Magic Mountain, new for 2019 or new for 2020 more like it. But this Hot Racer model, it's a lot like an RMC Raptor. It's a lot like a West Coast Racers model. So to me, they're taking from 2 manufacturers with just that one. It's more so like RMC because of the single rail track, but it is very similar to Premier's West Coast Racers model. So there's that. However, this Hot Racer model does look really cool. I know that plenty of parks are going to be interested in it. I would definitely ride it wherever it goes, but it does look eerily similar to so many different other manufacturer models that I just can't get that out of my head. So that's the first one. Then the second one, we have the vertical LSM launch coaster, which right off the bat, as soon as you look at it, it looks exactly like a Premier Skyrocket 2. So that's now another model that Intamin seems to be, I don't want to say stealing, but more so adopting from a different manufacturer. But this one is much, much more similar to the Premier Skyrocket 2 model than the Hot Racer is to West Coast Racers. That's kind of just a little bit speculation. With the vertical LSM launch coaster that Intamin's creating, it's almost a given that they took that idea from the Premier Skyrocket 2. It looks exactly like Tempesto, Tigris, Phobia Fear Coaster, all the Premier Skyrocket 2s. However, there are a lot of different new elements on there. They have the world's first upside down launch, which looks really cool. And then there's also something called a zigzag loop and a torpedo dive. Both of those elements look really, really crazy. And then also another thing I noticed about it was that the track goes into the station twice, as opposed to the Premier Skyrocket 2s, which only go into the station once. And then when it comes back down after the second loop, it's above the station. So that's where it's a little bit different. And this seems like a bigger scale coaster, but it's still very similar in that it's, it's a small footprint. It's got a similar style and its structure. Overall, the ride experience in itself is very similar to it. And I'm actually a little bit concerned about how reliable this model is going to be, because I know Intamin had so many issues with Volcano the Blast coaster, which had an upwards launch. So the fact that they're developing an upside down launch that high up, to me just seems like that might be a little bit problematic. However, Intamin seems to be improving on their launch track capabilities and stuff like that, so hopefully it doesn't have that many issues. But once again, it is eerily similar to the Premier Skyrocket 2 model, so that's the second one. Now the third one is absolutely undeniable that it is so much like a certain manufacturer's ride. Now, it's literally called the Ultra Splash, not the Power Splash, the Ultra Splash. Now, I bring up the Power Splash because that's a model built by Mock Rides. And these two models look exactly the same. They're both, they're U-shaped. They're shuttle coasters that go back and forth. And obviously they have a splashdown section. The trains are very similar. Intamin has a little bit of a different design on the front of the train. And they also have a section where there's a path under the airtime hill. So that's a little bit different. And I think that's really cool as well. But these models are literally exactly the same. This Intamin model is exactly the same as the Mock Rides one. I will say the Intamin model looks a lot cooler because that's another model that they took the single track design from RMC, of course, and developed it into a water coaster, which obviously RMC has not done that yet. But this one is the one that's really given inspiration to this video, in that it's the Intamin Heist. Like, they straight up took this idea from Mock Rides and now we're trying to run with it. So that's definitely not innovating in my mind, Coaster Daddy. I do not think that was innovating at all. But like I said, it does look a lot cooler with the single rail. It does look a lot nicer, but that one is just way too similar for me. So this last model is known as a Giga Splash. And when I first heard about this, I figured, of course, it would be over 300 feet tall since it has Giga in the name, but it's actually only about 130 feet tall. So the fact that they call it a Giga, I think has to just refer to how big the splash zone is from it, which I think is a little stupid. So the manufacturer that Intamin stole for this idea is B&M, because they, of course, made a model that's listed as a Giga, but is not a Giga. Kidding. Orion's totally a Giga. It was actually one of my favorite coasters on my trip. I'll talk about that in a different video. But the Giga Splash has this like 280 some degree panoramic lift hill, which seems pretty cool. That's another thing that might be a little bit problematic, knowing Intamin and their reliability issues, but it does look really cool. It also has like an angled drop and a pretty steep drop as well, apart from that. And it seems like there's like a lot of theming to go along with this too. It almost kind of looks like the Jurassic Park River Adventure at Universal's Islands of Adventure. And it also seems like they're going to try to have operations to where this Giga Splash has an airtime hill and the train goes over the airtime hill as the second train goes under the airtime hill. So that's a really cool interaction point. So this is the one model that's not actually taking from any manufacturers, I don't think. It seems like it's just an improvement on their previous water coasters that they've built in Europe, because a lot of them do have like those elevator type lift hills, but this is another one with the single rail track. So that's another way where they're kind of taking from RMC. But overall, these four concepts, let's take away the Giga Splash. The three other concepts just seem way too similar to these manufacturers. So you've got RMC Raptor, Premier Dueling, Premier Skyrocket 2, Mock Power Splash. So they're taking from three different manufacturers and four different models in my mind. So we've seen some manufacturers in recent years adopt from other different manufacturers. Just take B&M this year with Orion, and the first wave turn on Orion is very similar to the wave turns that we've seen on different RMCs, like Twisted Cyclone, for example. And Intamin has also adopted from RMC in the past in Pantheon, which hasn't even opened yet, but it has two elements in the outward bank turn, and then also the zero-G stall is very similar to different RMC elements as well. So to me, that's a little bit different than taking whole track or model designs. Just specific elements is a little bit different. I don't think it's as much taking as it is just borrowing. So it is a little odd to see that Intamin's taking this one step further and not just adopting single elements and instead seemingly taking entire ride models away from other manufacturers, or at least just track designs, or, well, in the case of the Ultra Splash, absolutely taking the ride design. So if I had to go in order of what was most unoriginal to most original, I would go the Ultra Splash is the most unoriginal. It's absolutely just the mock power splash. Then you have the vertical LSM launch is very similar to the Premier Skyrocket 2. That's not very original at all. Then you have the Hot Racer, which seems to be borrowing from two different manufacturers a little bit, mostly RMC with the single rail, a little bit Premier with the West Coast Racers. Some people don't agree with me on that, but I do think that it's a little bit like West Coast Racers. So that would be 3, and then the Giga Splash is 4th. That's probably the most original. But all of these rides don't really seem like that crazy. They just seem like they're new models that are very similar to already existing models that are starting to incorporate new elements. So what Intamin's doing now, instead of adopting single elements, they seem to be adopting whole ride models that they're adding their new elements to. So it is an interesting approach. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. It does seem a little fraudulent to me. I don't want to accuse Intamin of anything, of any sort of wrongdoings, but it does seem a little weird how similar all these ride models are. Regardless, I am pretty excited to see these at different parks. I'm sure a lot of parks are going to get them. Just look at Universal, for example. They've already built one Intamin multi-launch coaster, and they're currently building the Jurassic Velocicoaster. And I'm sure with the Ultra Splash, Intamin might try to sell it for cheaper just to be competitive with Mach, but it all is a little strange. I guess you could call Intamin the con artist of roller coaster manufacturers, because they have pulled off the ultimate ride model heist. I'm mostly just kidding about that. I don't actually think that Intamin is doing anything wrong. Is it a little bit immoral? Maybe. They're pretty much doing what any company would do just to stay competitive. These ride models are pretty popular. The Mach Power Splash is going to over Texas. There's plenty of Premier Skyrocket 2s out there. Dueling coasters are becoming more popular. Single rail coasters are starting to become more popular. So Intamin's just doing whatever they can to stay competitive. And I guess it is just business, but it was pretty interesting to see these ride models introduced. So what did you guys think? Did you guys really think that this is an Intamin heist, or do you think that they're actually truly innovating and coming up with these on their own and just not taking any inspiration from any manufacturers at all? Let me know what you think about this whole Intamin heist. Leave a comment down below what you think of the ride models. Are you excited about them? Are you angry about them? Whatever you think, just leave a comment down below. Leave a like on the video if you like this, if you like coaster news, and of course subscribe to the channel, and even hit that notification bell if you want, because obviously I know you guys want more content like this, so I'm going to try to give it to you. But yeah, subscribe to Coaster John, and as always, ride on.